Welcome to the LegalTube podcast, presented by LawyerLocate.ca. Join us as we explore the latest trends, strategies, and tools for promoting your legal practice in the digital age. Hosted by Mark Robbins, CEO of LawyerLocate.ca, LegalTube, and Digital MSpace, where we're all about legal marketing online for Canadian lawyers. Let's dive in.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the podcast. It's our June edition of the LegalTube podcast. We're very fortunate today. We have two guests from a large and unique firm called VLaw. We have the co-founder and CEO, Lyon Chang, and along with him is the managing lawyer, Niki Kihira. Welcome to the show, gentlemen. Lyon, how are you?
Very well, Mark. Thanks very much for having us.
Niki?
Very well, thanks. Thanks for having us.
So, Lyon, the reason we're having you on the show, you've come up with a concept that's very unique in Canada. You've developed a virtual law firm. And right away, I know my listeners and viewers are going, what? Don't tell me this is going to be an AI thing. Obviously, that's not what it is. But in an overview, what inspired you to create VLaw, and kind of in layman's terms, what is it?
For sure. Well, VLaw really is about how I think the future of law might look like. And I appreciate you pointing it out that it is a different model in Canada specifically, Mark, because the way that lawyers practice, and I don't have to tell you this or your listeners, law is one of the most traditional, if not one of the oldest profession there is, right? And so when you look at the law practice, we really got looking at how the legal practice has been and how it has evolved, especially since the pandemic. And so we actually have done the research and look at how the legal practice have done and think about what does the lawyers really need. And we come up with this idea of how can we provide the back end office for lawyers so that they can practice wherever they are, whenever they want, and however they like.
Okay, now that's interesting because I know that during the pandemic, I use Ontario as an example. We went through an issue in the courts in Ontario. They were kind of the slowest ones to come around to virtual courtrooms and virtual meetings and all that. And it had a real effect, obviously, on lawyers' cash flow streams. Did you take it from the problems that occurred in Canadian law during the pandemic?
We actually started the research and just market validation even prior to the pandemic. It really started from an idea of what might, a remote presence be like. And, now that we're on screen, as we all are, it's hard to think back to the time where a virtual meeting was rare, right? If we think back to when it was not the norm of having a remote presence. And so it really came down to how accessible law is, right? So not only are the lawyers able to practice, but also for clients to be able to access them. And so that's really one of the founding ideation that we started with, is how might we bring those together. So looking at some of the stats, yeah, there is that need for the clients to look for lawyers and be able to connect with them. And this is where we kind of thought, how might that look like? So we started with that idea of a virtual law firm, law practice, where clients are able to find and meet their lawyers online. But more than that, how can we provide that service to the lawyers to be able to serve their clients?
Okay, so Niki, you are a practicing lawyer currently. You're in a firm. How, from your side of it, do you view the benefits? And if there are benefits, what are they from a lawyer's viewpoint?
Work-life control. There's a term called work-life balance that everyone likes to use. I still don't fully understand what that means. But I do understand what work-life control means, because I don't really understand what the balance means. Different things, different people, but control is big. So if you can work from wherever you like, oftentimes that means somewhere usually inside where you live. You can cut commute time for one thing. So the long commutes to an office, you no longer need to worry about. So that's already extra time that you could spend on something else or simply doing more work. You can work from locations that you like, so that's very helpful. And the other not exactly advantage, but the other really good thing about remote work is you're not actually tied to remote. If the client is in fact close by, nothing stops you from actually meeting a client in person. Usually it does actually still help to meet a client in person, but not having an office that you need to go to generally gives you more control of your life. So you still do need to, you can still choose to work long hours and do a lot of work. And in some ways, it actually allows you to work more because you can go to start working from a readily accessible spot.
Okay, excellent. And Leon, circle back to the other half of this equation as I perceive it, and do either one of you correct me if I'm not seeing this vision properly. So where's the benefit for the prospective client?
Absolutely. So really, with VLaw, we have two clients. Technically, we have the lawyers, which are the provider of the legal services, and we have the end user, which are the consumers seeking for legal services. And so in this case, the benefits really comes in from the fact that we allow the lawyers to do the lawyering, primarily just focusing on just that part of their lawyering services, and in turn providing a better, more focused and concentrated client service to their clients. And so much like, how you help lawyers create professional video content, we handle the lawyers' back-end operations, freeing them up to focus on their core values and delivering their best services, whether it be remote, in virtual, or in person sometimes, much like Niki has said.
Okay, so just for sake of clarity, and some of where my questions are going to start to come from, if you can see in the sign behind me, this division is a division of LawyerLocate.ca that was created by Natalie Waddell about 23 years ago. And I remember reading an article when Law Times did a story on her, this young woman starting up this referral service. And I remember one of the lines that always stuck with me when we talked about it, and I think it's a parallel to you guys, is she likened it to a dating service for lawyers and clients. Because the way Lawyer Locate was marketed was it was free to the general public. There was no fees whatsoever to request referrals, search the database, go to the website, whatever. And the lawyers paid on a subscription, which is, I'm bringing it back to something important here. So they paid a subscription. It was started off at a very low dollar value 23 years ago to where at an annual price. And then now it's just a monthly subscription because that's basically the way everybody goes. So having said that, how do you get paid?
Very good question. And definitely that, speaks to kind of how one of the core values that we found was not only are we freeing up the lawyers' free time so that they can actually focus on their clients, focus on their work, but also cutting down on that overhead and that haircut. So the way that we collect on our fees is we work on a subscription basis, much like you have mentioned, Mark. And so the way that we work is, generally speaking, our lawyers are able to keep 70% of their billing. And this is not seniority, there's no tenure. This just goes straight across the board. You join VLaw, you're able to keep 70% in the general speaking, and we will keep the 30 for the operations, for the joint marketing that we come into to play, as well as any overhead in office expenses. So even just from off the top, you're able to realize that financial capital gain, that freedom, as well as that availability to be able to focus on the work that you really want to get into as a lawyer.
Sounds to me, and again, either one of you jump in, very similar to what personal injury lawyers do. in the sense of it's not on a, you're not waiting for a win, but you're saying when you do get your wins, I'm taking 30%. Then by oversimplified that, or is that spot on?
It's interesting. So we do base a minimum basic subscription fee so we can keep operations running, of course. So that's where the basic subscription comes into play. But then as you continue to grow your revenue, grow your billings once received, then that's where on our back end, our finances will go into calculations, ensuring that yes, much like if you get a win, once you close a case, once you receive your appropriate billings, we'll do the deductions. Again, that's our finance department's job, and then get you the your share as quickly as possible.
Okay, so then this also begs the question, being as Niki and I were talking in the green room, I'm a retired private investigator. So do you have a fear, or do you have any feedback from the public getting nervous that, oh, if they're taking 30%, is the lawyer going to pad my bill?
That's a very good question. I think that's one of the things that we will often have a conversation, because not just anyone joins the firm. It does go through a process, and having that understanding. So in my mind, that goes into the core values of being a practitioner of law. And so I might be naive in that sense, Mark, in terms of how I think of, local professionals. But Niki, perhaps you can, chime in as well on your thoughts on
Yes,
that.
thank you. Yeah, thank you. And thanks for saying that. And I can answer that question. Sure, clients can be nervous about padding bills, but that applies to any firm. That's not unique to us, because even in non-virtual firms, the split system where some percentage of what the lawyer makes goes to the firm is very common in non-virtual standard firms as well. And so that same anxiety of is there going to be bill padding is not unique to an online virtual system. That is in fact old anxiety, and it's about lawyers' ethics of knowing what not to do. Right. And in the case of VLaw, it's 70% goes to the lawyer and 30% goes to the firm. But in other non-virtual firms, there's 50% splits, or 60% going to the lawyer and 40% going to the firm. So if anything, the padding anxiety should be lower with us, or at least it shouldn't be something that our structure actually rises or raises uniquely relative to other firms.
Yeah, certainly I get that. And again, coming from Ontario primarily, and just a recent transfer to the province of Alberta, and I was very involved and knew what went on with the law society. Kind of started to clamp down on personal injury lawyers, the selling of files, and the advertising that we go to court, we fight, and some law firms had never seen inside of a courtroom in their lives, other than that moot court in law school. So that became a big issue. And because I speak of Ontario, it's not because, I'm an Eastern guy and the eastern side of Canada runs everything. It's not that, but certainly the legal community is huge in the province of Ontario. So the public, whether you live in BC, if you live in Alberta, Nova Scotia, wherever, you gravitate to something happens in Ontario, you're going to gravitate to that and go, oh, do I need to be careful? And again, to show parallels, the early days of Lawyer Locate, we had the similar types of issues, but conversely, on the other side of the coin, we had lawyers that said, oh, you can't advertise, that's illegal. And this was long after they'd restrict, because used to be in Ontario, you could only advertise in Yellow Pages. That was it. You couldn't have a print ad, you couldn't have a television, none of that. And so our biggest struggle starting up was getting the lawyers to understand that this is okay. And then the public, again, it was getting credibility for the brand. And that just took time. And, we weren't doing as much back then. There was no social media to work with. So a lot of our stuff was television. So we used a lot of what were called dot spot ads. So a quick story that I love sharing it with people is that I think about third or fourth year in, we were doing, I had a friend that was the general sales manager at CHCH TV in Ontario. And they also had the rights to PGA for Canada. And the year that Tiger Woods was in Canada, doing the Canadian Open. There's a famous shot that he had put himself in a really awkward, rough shot, and it was like it's impossible. And he nails this thing, and it's over this tree, and it lands like, a foot and a half from the cup. What had happened was, and I didn't know this so this was on Sunday, because we sponsored Fun Around Sundays. Our ads were there. Our ad was above Tiger's head when he made the shot, and every time it replayed, even on news, on sports, our ad was on the top of it. They couldn't remove it. So I got phone calls from people I hadn't heard from in 20, 30 years. But anyway, I digress, and I don't mean to do that. So moving forward with this concept, one, right now you're just BC, you're not national.
Correct. So thank you for pointing that out. It's VLaw of Canada. And so we are starting in BC as a soft launch. We started this year. And so primarily because of our personnel and resources are primarily in BC. And we are also getting that feedback from users of our services, as well as everyone that we talk to, so that we can continuously pivot as well as refine our approach and look and really providing the services and products that the lawyers really will want to use. And so part of that is in how we are designing and launching our product currently in BC with BC lawyers that we're tracking right now. But our short-term goal is to expand across the country. So Alberta, Ontario, obviously being some of the places that we want to have some presence in. So we are looking into those markets as well, having some parallels to what Niki's doing as well.
So to be clear from a client's point of view, you're not saying that you're only going to meet a lawyer virtually. You're still going to have the potential or the possibility of having that face-to-face handshake contact. As we like to say, we put you together with not only the lawyer that you want, but the lawyer that you need that will match your personality and your emotional requirements. We do a lot of talking about that, especially in family law, because we've seen over the years, or I have with my background, how many times, it's a great lawyer, no bedside manner, doesn't understand what this client's really going through, and it's a bad match, and you end up with complaints and concerns and all. So we've become, over the years, we've learned to become very aware of how we do our referral matching. And I'm not sure how you folks do it. I know we do. We've got the 9 major categories law. We break it down now to over 350 subcategories. So if you're putting a referral in with us, it's going out to specifically the types of lawyers that can address your legal concerns. And so my question to you is, not that I see you as a competitor to Lawyer Locate, but how do you address the fact that law today has become so complex? It's not just, I need a criminal lawyer. I need a family lawyer. Like everyone is getting so down to the finest points. How do you address that for both sides, by the way, for your lawyer clients and for the general public?
Absolutely. Let me speak to that a little bit, and maybe I'll have Niki to jump in as well. With regards to finding, the right match between, the clients and the lawyers, I think you're right. There is more than the traditional facets, areas of practice, location and such. And to your point earlier, it's not just that virtual and remote relationship. It is that in-person relationship as well. The virtual in VLaw really is how we provide the back-end service to the lawyers. So for the lawyers to be able to service their clients, absolutely, they choose how they provide that service to their clients. So that is very important, is ensuring that there is that satisfaction between the lawyers and the clients. And so that's how we kind of ensure that we allow the lawyers that time and the availability and have the tools to be able to focus on our conversation. And maybe, Niki, I'll turn over to you in terms of how you might be able to provide that service to the clients from the lawyer's perspective as well.
Well, from the lawyer's perspective, this goes back to how I mentioned there is, with our model, there's a high level of what I call work-life control for the lawyers. So with the VLaw model, the lawyers have a lot of autonomy as to how to provide services to their client, because we do have a VLaw brand, but the VLaw brand is by and large ethics, ethical conducts, following the rules, of a law society, doing a good responsible practice. But beyond that, the lawyers don't have a sense of, oh, because I'm at, X firm, I need to approach the client a certain way. That kind of bias or that kind of thinking is absent. So that allows the lawyers to serve the clients as they see fit. And because there's no fundamental pressure about increasing the billables or increasing that or doing that, as long as you pay the subscription fee and properly follow the subscription model contract, there's also no pressure on lawyers to take on clients that may be inappropriate for them. So I think that's how it would help that client service.
So it leads me to think about we're all talking about technology. We're all talking about AI. And to make some distinctions here, again, to help your potential clients and not necessarily your potential lawyers, I'm going to circle back to the potential lawyers in a minute, but potential clients, you're not an AI driven company. I'm sure I'm going to ask you, do you use AI in any aspects of how you run this business? I think I know the answer, but I want to give you the opportunity, Leon.
Thank you so much, Mark. Absolutely. I think it's no secret that AI is not the future, it is the now, right? It is not something that it can be ignored. It cannot be, I bring it back to my days of being over 2 decades of being in banking, right? It is not something that you can ignore with technology adoptions. We know that, with technology, the legal services, unfortunately, has been one of the slowest to adopt any technology advancements. I know I'm preaching to the choir. And so it is interesting to witness how that has streamlined operations while enhancing client relationships. From my background in banking, especially, you can have different says about it, but there's the ATM, there is online banking, there is mobile banking. The same way how you might be able to access your lawyer as you need to, right? Can you get them on a call? Can you get them on a video meeting? Those are the expectations, especially now, with how our modern society has evolved, having been through times where we are not able to see even our loved ones and families. That is something I think we are being very cognizant and aware of in terms of how can we enhance those parts from the traditional model of lawyer providing services to where it should be now.
That's excellent. So starting to think a little more, I don't think there's any question of who you're targeting for the general public. You're targeting the general public, businesses, corporate, whoever's needing Canadian legal, in your case right now, BC legal help. But what's your target market on the lawyer side? Are you targeting the big law firms, the McCarthy Tetros? Are you targeting the small boutique firms and sole practitioners? And let me qualify that question is that we know our research over 20 odd years is that the days of the big firm nationals are dying. Small boutique and LLPs are where everything is going, and sole practitioners. So I probably answered your question for you, but I want to give you the opportunity.
Absolutely. Well, as you know, as you have very validly pointed out, 60% of, our legal services, if not more in Canada, are in this small, medium sizes. So primarily who we are targeting, if you will, currently in our model, the way that we structure it is for primarily the solo practitioners. Think about the ones that are coming out, of a few years, between 5 to 10 years of call. They probably went through COVID. They probably went through the difference of returning to office. I know that's a hot topic. And Mark, having you said being from the East, that's probably a bigger conversation in terms of returning to office. So we are looking to say, hey, there is another way to practice. And we're not saying, and one of the things I would say that is interesting is that we're not exclusive. We can actually be, the side hustle mentality, we can actually be on the side. As long as there's no conflicts with your primary work, with your primary employment or contract, we actually are able to allow lawyers to start building their practice on the side and allow them that opportunity to say, where do I really want to focus in? Because a lot of times you're fed by your firm of the cases, but they may not be the ones that you really want to get into and really want to gravitate towards. And so we really want to build around that user experience of the lawyers to give them what they want, to allow them to practice the way that they really intend to.
Perfect. So I'd be remiss if we didn't get around to a little more in depth in the sense that my show is supposed to be mostly about legal marketing. So let's talk about legal marketing. Like what are your avenues? What are you using? What tools, digital tools, online tools, social media tools are you using to market your product?
You know, it's interesting that you say that. With marketing, and I know, with your, I think I think with Lawyer Locate and LegalTube, I think one of the things that we see, and I'm actually curious, because I know, Mark, you guys are looking at some AI enhancements to the services for Lawyer Locate as well. And that's one of the things that we're looking at in terms of traditional marketing. There's the print, there is, the ads and such in local, national publications, but also online, short form, long form, the blogs and such, and podcasting, of course. These
Right.
are all things that we are experimenting, reaching out, and seeing where the tractions are. It's oftentimes that we talk about, where's the party at, and
Right.
where do lawyers congregate, and that's part of it as well. So we do see a lot of traction with our LinkedIn content, as well as how we are approaching some of our marketing approaches. And we are actually in plan of launching a talk series as well, for a lunch hour talk series, bringing some industry professionals to the table with the lawyers so that they can get ahead of the industry, knowing what is happening now and what potentially might come down the line. I'm sure this is something that is, bread and butter to yourself, Mark. And I'm actually curious to hear, what are you seeing in this market, and how might that look like going forward?
What we've seen, because we're blessed in a sense of the longevity of being I know in Canada, we're the longest online legal directory and referral service ever. I have yet to find anybody out there in the world that does what Lawyer Locate does that's remained online for more than 5 years. So that's the good thing. The ultimate thing that we did was we recognized change. So best example I can use of that is LegalTube.ca. We bought that URL 15 years ago. And I remember Natalie, I said, look, we're buying URLs. I said, get me this one. Well, what do you want it for? I said, just trust me, get me this. And I remember talking to actually a very big American legal influencer, Kevin O'Keefe, who owns LexBlog out of Seattle. And his whole thing was blogging. And he had a company that did blogging aggregates for lawyers. And I remember at a function with him once, and I said, Kevin, I said, the future is video. It's not, nobody's going to read. And it's a sad statement to make. But the truth is, and the numbers support it with Google and YouTube, searches now are at the 55-50 in favor of YouTube. The age demographic that's interesting is 15 to 59. So there's been a big shift in that. The other shift that I see happening currently that we finally acknowledged is, again, short attention spans. So we're getting more traction from TikTok, YouTube Shorts, Reels. Any short form video is getting far more traction than the long form. All right. And this is the whole thing about using digital marketing or video marketing, and that is where it's at now. And I don't think it's going to change other than grow over the next 5 to 10 years. I really don't. I mean, YouTube has replaced television for probably 4 generations. People are just and I equate streaming also to YouTube because it's the same thing. It's just a different packaging. So I'm one of them. I mean, I cut my cable cord 15, 16 years ago. best thing I ever did. But from the
Yes.
business, to answer your question, like I do see that companies, whether it's a service-based company or lawyers themselves, we advise our clients, you need to jump into the video market. We can help you to get there. We can show you how easy it is. It can be as simple as, it's a sole practitioner once a week, get in front of your telephone or in front of your phone, just talk about something that gives some benefit of knowledge to the public. Do it in an engaging manner. Don't do it as though you're the stiff guy with your tie and suit. I said, get the tie off, get the suit off, talk to the screen, tell them some stuff, give them some help, give them some information. So I think that's the future of the current. It's the current method, I believe. You could spend. I use the analogy because I really disliked it. The Fan 680 in Toronto, which is the largest radio sports broadcaster in Canada. And I remember how many years ago, as I said to them, I said, look, I'm looking to buy some ad time. What are we looking at here? And they said, well, what do you want? And, to put together a package. Basically, it was going to come up to something like $15,000 a day for 3 15-second ads. I said, you're on nuts. I said, let me rephrase the question. I said, we rank high on just about everything in search, organic search results. So what are you going to pay me to affiliate with my URL? And they did not know how to handle that question. So bottom line, to describe what I'm saying, is that traditional old school television ads are not working because nobody's watching it. You have to get down to if you want to find out, ask the lawyer that you want to bring in or that you're targeting, say, okay, how many hours do you spend watching TV? What channels do you watch? Most of them will look at, guys my age will look at you and go, what the hell are you talking about? So that advertising is not going to go here. Not many are listening to traditional radio anymore. If you're a sports guy like I am, I will listen to the Fan, but it's only because I'm a diehard sick Maple Leafs fan. Radio, same thing. So you have to look at where are the people. And I've always remembered that way back when I was a Zig Ziglar trainee. Where are the people going? Where are they looking for products and services? Be in that place. So I hope I answered your question.
I think it's interesting. What I'm hearing, Mark, is that technology is enhancing, but not replacing that personal connection. And I think, scaling the personal relationship through these kind of methods of reaching the target audience is interesting. But we know lawyers are a special breed. And so, that's where, my mind is at in terms of how might we reach lawyers that may be more traditional in many senses, but also may not be as quick to adapt and adopt. And I know, this is something that Niki has come across as well in terms of reaching the lawyers in their own turf and such. Do you have any take in terms of how, reaching lawyers in traditional senses, and how have you evolved that in terms of, Mark, how you have gone through that transition and reaching that target audience?
So the short answer to that is, when we started this company in 2002, we did traditional telemarketing because it was still the thing to do. So we telemarketed for probably 4 or 5 years. We started to ease out of that, and we started to get more involved in shows. So we would do a lot of, we would do the annual CBA. We would do on the Lost Side of Ontario, as it was then. They had 2 solo practitioner shows that we'd do. And we kind of stayed with that for about 8, 9 years. Got a lot of traction from doing that. A lot of traditional, having a booth, handing out brochures, having out swag. And then we noticed that started to die off. And that's when the advent of, there was more and more stuff going on online. So we ramped up our online presence, basically shut down our telemarketing team completely. Because the brand, by that time, our brand was very well known in Canada to both the public and to lawyers across the country. They'd seen enough of us out there. Today, again, like I said earlier in our conversation, the evolution has come to digital media is the home for both sides. And if you're trying to move a product or a service, I don't care where you are in the world, you have to incorporate a large part of social media that's personable, that's to the point, and again, offers something that's perceived to be giving me something, but you're not asking me for anything in return. And that's a very subtle line to walk, because you can go too far and you look like a con man. You don't go far enough and they're going, well, this isn't believable. And all of that has to be balanced in how you present and who's presenting. I watch you, Leon. I go, you know what? You will be a great face of your company because you are personable, and no shot at you, Niki, but it's just, I always find it interesting. Leon came on in a very nice sweater, all good and tight. You come, I'm sorry, and you're a young lawyer, but you come like an old school 62-year-old lawyer. Got to have my white shirt, got to have my tie, got to be buttoned up, right? And the reality is, for the public side, and sometimes for the lawyer's side, that's not necessarily the message you want to transmit. I do a show, we produce a podcast called Fire Away with an Ontario employment law lawyer, Stuart Rudner. The longest that we're up to, we're doing episode 89 on Wednesday. So he's been with us 8 years. We've been doing monthly shows. He started off traditional way, suit and tie in the boardroom, because he had the boardroom in Markham. Everything was tickety-boo. A year and a half ago, we were having our production meetings. I said, you know what? I want you to lose the tie. I want you to lose the suit. And he's like, what? I said, yeah. I said, we've always said we want to keep you more personable, approachable. And at the end of the day, whether you're a client, if you're a lawyer, or if you're a client, you want to be approachable. That sounds easy, but it's not that easy to pull off. And we believe we've been successful at it. The numbers support it. And like everybody else in our industry, we rely on metrics, and we rely on the stats to say, okay, are we moving in the right direction?
Absolutely. I think that is, thank you for sharing that journey, and as well as that perspective, because that's where I believe going forward and now really is leveraging that technology front, leveraging that social media. You might be able to find different, I think, vectors in different channels, as you say, and that's where I think we are exploring those opportunities to ensure that we're reaching the people that really need, what VLaw offers, is enable them to be able to really focus on their work, focusing on their clients. They're not really, bogged down by that billable hours quota, none of that. It's about how do they want to run their practice and how do they deliver that service to their clients. That really comes back to, where VLaw really sits. And in this, I think, unexplored territory, especially in Canada. And that's why we really we really feel confident about what we're offering.
Excellent. So, gentlemen, it's hard to believe we've more than gone past the show, but I was quite happy to let that go. So I'm going to take a couple minutes for you individually to kind of close out. You can put up or mention anything you want. Everybody that's watching and listening, there will be the contact information underneath here. It will have where the website is, their contact information will all be there. So Leon, I'll let you start to wrap up your side.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having us, Mark. Really, about what we're offering is to ensure that the lawyers are able to practice anywhere and practice anytime in whatever manner that they choose to. And that's really the benefit that we want to avail the lawyers. We're looking forward to some interesting future-looking services. We have a dedicated conveyancing team that's going to come down the pipeline very soon that will allow solos, practitioners, as well as smaller firms to be able to leverage that service. And we're also exploring some AI opportunities as well. So, Mark, thank you once again for having us. This is something that we're very excited to be able to bring to the Canadian market.
My pleasure, Leon. Niki?
Yeah, thank you for having us. And it's been a real pleasure speaking to you and talking about the firm. It's kind of ironic that you mentioned that the suit and tie, that is my default, because you're right. When I'm meeting someone or going somewhere for the first time, that absolutely is my default. But when I actually don't have an official meeting like this, or I'm not going to court or anything like that, I actually don't have my tie. I actually don't have my jacket. So you're right. When something happens, I do go to the default look, which is quite funny. So yeah, that was a good catch. I never thought of it before, but that's actually good to know. But podcasts don't need to wear the suited tie. It's actually easier on me that way. That's great. Yeah, and like Leon said, VLaw is a way where lawyers can just focus on the work and control the way they can work without the, what, for lack of a better term, extraneous focuses, whether it's the billable hour or the administration or some type of extra branding beyond ethics or things like that. Those worries go to the wayside, and it's a place where they can simply zone in on the legal work itself from the location they want to.
That's excellent. Thank you both. Leon, Niki, you guys are amazing. We could go on for another 3 shows. And who knows, maybe we can try and circle back and get you to come back on, and we can really get deeper into dissecting your services. I think they're brilliant. I love where you're going with it. I think that you've got the right ideas, and I think it's a timely service for lawyers and for the public. I mean, I know you guys want to talk about the lawyers because that's where your cash flow is going to come from. But the old story from my side as an old private investigator: no clients, no cash flow. So, and you're talking about the most highly competitive professional industry in the world, if not Canada. And I know I talk to lawyers quite a bit, especially in the GTA, and they're like, "Oh, I'm just going to hanging the shingle will not make them come." So I've given talks at law schools, gotten in trouble for it, where I've opened with, when you get called to the bar, make your first lawsuit against this law school. And like, people have been appalled at this commentary. And I've quite, have the pause. I mean, it was for a dramatic point. And then I said, look, law schools and universities fail lawyers in Canada for one reason: you are not mandated to have a minor in business. Most lawyers I know, and I don't care how old they are, do not conduct business properly. They don't get it. They just think, oh, I just go practice law. Oh, I got to negotiate a lease. Oh, I have to worry about how I fire someone. Things that you think in law, they'd understand. But in the real application of a business profile and running an office and watching your overheads, I'd see Leon's just nodding his head because he knows exactly what I'm talking about. And I'm not bashing lawyers, but I'm just saying, and I don't blame lawyers. It's just been my experience that most of them don't understand. It's getting better, thanks really to the internet and social media. They start to understand, oh, I have to be more involved in these things. Anyway, gentlemen, I want to just say thank you so much, and everybody, my audience, my listeners, my viewers. This has been an exciting podcast. I hope you enjoy it. If you have comments, please don't hesitate to give us some comments, because we want to hear the feedback. My guests want to hear the feedback. Please do take the time to like and subscribe us. That way, if you're subscribed, you'll get to know when our next show is, what time, and who our guests are going to be. So that's been our show today. Again, it's VLaw. If you can't wait to look it up on our website, please go to the internet. You'll find them very quickly. Leon, Chang, and Niki, Kihira have been just wonderful guests. I look forward to having more interaction with them. And to everybody else that knows our show, I always ask the same thing. If you think you need legal marketing help, you probably do. Give us a call. See what we can do for you. Thanks again, everybody.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the LegalTube podcast. Ready to take your legal marketing to the next level? Our show delivers expert insights and practical advice to help you succeed in today's competitive legal landscape. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, this podcast is for you. For more information, check out LawyerLocate.ca. And if you have any questions, get in touch with us. Thanks for listening.